last couple of weeks, I had to send some mail out. Haven't done that in a while. Anybody here? Seems like the outgoing mail is less and less. Stamps keep going up in price. Maybe that's why. But I had bought a sheet of the forever stamps that usually come with the flag on them. But as I grabbed the stamp and I was putting on the envelope, I went, it says freedom on this stamp. And as I looked at that word, I got flashbacks all the way back to the 60s and thought about the word freedom, that's the word we've chosen to put on our postage stamp that the United States sees as a core value for us, freedom. And I know that that's, the whole reason that the United States came into being, to have freedom from the tyranny of the British Crown, to be able to do things their way, to make their own choices, to be honored and live the way that their hearts wanted them to live. And they got busy, and by 1776, they had put together what? The Declaration of Independence. And I love the first few lines of it, so I thought we could all read it together up here on the screen. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they're endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Fast forward to 1892, and we're also writing a pledge of our allegiance to our flag. And though it's been rewritten a few times since then, it's ended, every single version has ended with liberty and justice for all. Does that sound familiar? And yet, we have not always experienced freedom in our country for all. Would you agree? Would you agree that we just created a new holiday in the last few years called Juneteenth, and its purpose was to celebrate, I don't know if celebrate's the right word, but just to acknowledge that that was the date when slaves were finally told everywhere that they were free, according to winning the Civil War. However, there were still slaves not freed even after Juneteenth of 1865, that there were still some more in various states that were not freed until what happened? We signed the 13th Amendment to our Constitution, and then they were set free. And fast forward 100 years, we're now in the 1960s, 50s, 60s, and we're not really seeing freedom yet. For African Americans, they would try and use a public facility, hospital, library, schools. Whites only was a sign that met them. So they were not free to use all the public facilities. And today, we know that African Americans continue to experience prejudice, discrimination, violence because of the color of their skin. So, sadly, it's not just African Americans who have experienced this lack of freedom. Women make up half of our population in the United States, and yet they did not have a say in the government of the United States through their vote until when? 1920. Do some of us need to go back to our history class? Hey, trust me, I did a lot of searching for historic moments in the last couple of weeks. And still today, not necessarily equal on the pay scale, not necessarily being given the rights to lead as easily as the male gender in our country. Then there's our Asian American family who has experienced discrimination and prejudice and violence since they really became part of the United States in the mid-1800s. And they would say that it's most obvious if you go back to World War II when they were incarcerated in internment camps. And though we don't have those camps any longer, I think that some of our Asian American friends would tell us they're still experiencing prejudice and discrimination and bias and violence in their lives. Sorry, but the list goes on. Interracial couples not allowed to marry until 1967. Same-sex couples, not allowed to marry until 2015. That's just like yesterday. And our LGBTQ plus community is still facing violence, death, discrimination, bias. Latino immigrants who have made the United States their home, become naturalized citizens, would say that they still are pulled over unfairly by police officers, that they're still denied fair treatment and experiencing a fear for their own personal safety. So can you hear how we might have some work to do when it comes to freedom for all in our country? And we know it as the land of the free, but not yet for all. And it's kind of like freedom is a relative term. Do you understand that? Freedom depends on who's saying it and what they believe it means, which is why some people feel like freedom is only for whites or people who fit into the mainstream. So in spite of the intentions of our Declaration of Independence and our Pledge of Allegiance and our constitutional amendments and the laws that we're continuing to write with their intention to provide freedom for all, sadly, they won't fulfill their purpose until we can agree on the meaning of the word freedom, if we can truly understand what that means. But you know what we have to work with right now that's such a pain to us is the collective consciousness. Because even though we have laws written, the collective consciousness can still contradict freedom for all. Have you seen that happen? I mean, there's still plenty of concrete work to do, for sure. For these groups that have been discriminated against and excluded, there is still work to be done to assure justice and equity and inclusion and diversity in all kinds of areas, employment practices, in social and economic systems, in our courts, in our citizenship. There's still work to do to make sure that we can experience freedom for all. It's important work that we continue to do, and no matter how much work we do, there is still a chance that we will not experience freedom for all as long as there's a collective consciousness as a dominant rule. Let me just clarify what I mean by that. There's a field of consciousness that surrounds this planet. It's all of our thoughts contributing to that single field. And the dominant frequency of those thoughts wins. It's like majority rules. Does that make sense? So as long as the dominant collective consciousness seems to be towards mine, not yours, you're different, you're wrong. As long as there's a hint of that in the dominant collective consciousness, then we have more than just laws to write. We've got an entire consciousness to change. And I think this is what Jesus was trying to talk about. In the book of Matthew, chapter 5, he said, "You've heard it said that you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be liable to judgment. But I say to you that if you're angry with a brother or sister, you will be liable to judgment." So I feel like he's talking about honoring not just the letter of the law, but the spirit of the law. Do you see how he was saying that? The spirit of the law. And even though here we are, back celebrating our Independence Day once again, there's still that feeling that we may never really know freedom for all in this country. And I don't want you to be depressed by that. I don't want you to think that I'm here throwing up my hands saying, we're only human, what do you expect? You know me, right? I'm different. And so here's what I want to speak about today. And actually what I'm going to ask you to do is just keep breathing through this. Whenever you hear something you feel like, yeah, but, I want you to just take a breath and try and focus on something a little bit higher, a lot a bit higher, that there is true freedom for all here, now. Just breathe it in. There is liberty and equality for all here, now. And to start showing you some examples of this, I've invited some of our congregation to speak to you about it. And these are friends who've probably experienced their own feeling of discrimination or prejudice or bias in their lives here for various reasons. So I'm going to let them tell you about this. You're going to hear from Kyra Webb, who was not able to be in town this weekend, so she was kind enough to pre-record a video, followed by Carlos Salgado, and then you'll hear from Diane Martin, and then you'll hear from Carol Gadbaugh, and they each have their own story to share about how they are experiencing freedom in spite of. So let's listen to Kyra first.
Hi, Unity family. If I hadn't had an opportunity to meet you yet, my name is Kyra Webb, and I've been asked to share with you how the principles of unity have afforded freedom in my life. You see, as an African American female in this country, I've experienced discrimination at just about every job that I've had. The one that stands out the most is when I was passed up not once, but twice for a promotion within a company that I spent 10 years at, despite having accolades at the clinic and regional levels. The company felt it was better to hire somebody who had no experience. At that time, I was a prayer chaplain for Unity, and I began to affirm what was true. There's nothing wrong with me. I am the spirit and embodiment of God, and I create my life. This got me thinking, and I said out loud, maybe this is the universe's way of telling me that I need to go back to school. Well, when I said that, I was in my chiropractor's office, and they encouraged me to look at chiropractic as a profession. Well, 4 years after that, I graduated. I continue to live, build, create a life that I love and enjoy. And matter of fact, now I'm in my own office. You see, the principles of unity afford each and every one of us the opportunity to be the best version of ourselves in this world. I thank you for allowing me to share a portion of my story with you today. I look forward to sharing space with you soon. Namaste. Hi, Unity family.
Hello. Hi, everyone. Well, my name is Carlos, and I'm going to tell you a little bit more of a story of how I came here. Well, my mom was Catholic, and she tried really hard to get some religion into me. I will go sit in church, and all I hear is that blah, 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 blah. Yeah, sure. I don't remember anything. Then as I grew up, she sent me to church, and it was convenient enough that I will say, yeah, Mom, I'm going to go to church on Sunday. And I will walk. It was a block and a half, and right on the right-hand side, there was a baseball field. So we'll stay, watch the game, wait for everybody to come out, and get back home. It's like, Mass was great. Didn't learn anything. What my religion was my dad, right? He was working class, only high school education, work nights. So he's really instilled in me the values of education and hard work and self-reliance and do the thing and own it. And that worked well for me. Then in the late 20s, I came to the United States. New language, new job, a lot of new things to wrestle with. And I leaned back on that religion, right? I doubled down, be more self-sufficient, double down on strive to accomplish. But now I was in a new environment, and it forced me to try to fit in with everybody who was around. And I think to an extent, I lost a great chunk of authenticity. Found myself in retrospective not being my true self anymore, but rather conforming to a lot of the things that were happening around. And this was exacerbated by facing discrimination and stereotypes for the Latino community, for Mexico, my country, for many different comments. I feel lucky that most of them were based on lack of knowledge not on malice. Some of them existed, but most of them were just misinformed. Also in my work, I'm usually the few, if not the only Latino. I work in computers, and I'm usually just one among 50. So when I face this environment again, I had to triple down now on just do my work, do it well, be very conscious, and work hard, strive to achieve. And it was working fine till about 5 years ago. I faced a divorce, and I was emotionally lost. I was broken, and my values and my religion didn't work anymore. No amount of striving and things could fix what I was. And it was at that breaking point when a friend suggested, and I started to go into, maybe I'll check this church thing, Christian church. I turned around 3 times and was like, nope, doesn't feel good. I don't think I can do this. It felt a lot like I was not being self-reliant. It felt a lot like I was broken and I was asking for help and begging for help. But that was the start of the journey of more of spirituality and just thinking outside of myself. Then Jill found Unity. And when I came into Unity, it was different than what I have heard before. Catholicism, mainstream Christian, and little by little started to resonate in me. And to this extent, I'll share a couple of struggles, right? One of the 2 main struggles that I have is I strive to accomplish and be self-reliant, and the other one has been to fit in. And when I find on this strive and succeed scenario, and I catch myself, and I take a step back, I go to one of the services where there were 4 of you standing here and talking about the abundance in the universe, and saying, you can be 4 types of containers. You can be the closed containers, the hollow container, small container, or a big container. You don't have to strive to do. You just have to be yourself a good container to receiving that energy. I don't know how to do that, but that gets me into the thinking on how do I become more of that when I'm wrestling with how am I going to strive or accomplish something. And that's changed how I see things. The second is the need to fit in with all the community and everything that is happening around me. And to that, I go to that song from Kim Char and say, I am not a drop in the ocean, right? I don't have to conform to everybody around you, to the ocean around me, to be myself. Because myself and all the elements are in me. I can be authentic even though I am in the ocean. And Jill's gonna laugh, and every time, because I bring this like every week, every now and then, it's like, you know what? That just gives me pause and makes me think about how do I become more authentic. So what Unity has taught me is my external circumstances, they're not changing. I'm still facing or experiencing discrimination, biases, and all of that. That's not going to change. That's the consciousness that is around me. But what is changing is having these little principles that I've picked along the way to say, I can change how I respond to them, how I interact with them, and not take them with malice or take them to affect me too much, but really navigate them. So there's still a long journey ahead, but I'm glad that I get to make it with this community. Thank you.
Good morning. When Kitty called me and asked me if I'd represent seniors today, I thought, why did she call me? But seriously, 2 days ago, I turned 74. So I'm very aware that I'm a senior. My body is not as strong as it once was, excuse me, and I have more aches and pains. My memory isn't as good, and sometimes I can't pull up the word I want to use. My hair is white. I wake up every day with new wrinkles and age spots. Society piles on too. Older people are not respected. They are slow, weak, feeble, unattractive. They don't contribute to society. They're grumpy, and they are a burden on their families, bad drivers, and as Carlos said, blah, blah, blah. So what I know from Unity teachings is that all of that is not the truth of who I am. I am God manifesting and pure love. Every day when I wake up, I set my intention for the day. I meditate on that intention and say a prayer knowing that I am healthy, capable, happy, peaceful, and young at heart. I don't put pressure on myself if I don't accomplish my plan for the day. What I did or didn't get done is exactly what I needed to do. And then I just start again the next day. And throughout the day, I find things to be grateful about. My grandchildren, my puppy, all the beautiful flowers that are blooming now, and so on. When I'm out in public, I enjoy greeting people or complimenting them. I see that it cheers them up, and it makes me happy too. Unity also tells us that what we say and do is mirrored back to us. If I think I'm old and can't do things, then the universe will be happy to oblige. If, however, I know I'm still vital and happy, then that is what I am. And by the way, I don't deny any health conditions and take the necessary steps to ensure my well-being. So by following Unity principles, I am free to be as young as I think I am. Am I perfect in my practice? No way. A few weeks ago, I was traveling, and I was in my seat on the plane, and a man came down the aisle with a T-shirt on that had a political message, and I was offended by it. I got angry. I actually thought about going up and telling him what a jerk he is. Then I took a deep breath, centered myself, and knew I did not want to be thrown off that plane for starting a fight. Seriously, though, I reminded myself that he, like all of us, is a manifestation of God on his own path and was put in my path to remind me of who I am. I am free to choose to be love. Thank you.
And so I debated with Diane when I first got here today. Diane, how come you were chosen to represent the seniors? But she has me beat by a couple of years, so that's how it's that. So I first became involved with church when I was 5 years old, and I was deeply ingrained in that church. I went every Sunday. I loved to sing the songs. I loved the church classes. There was nothing about church I didn't love. And I was taught about the God in the sky, that God on the throne who's there to judge you, that God on the throne who was going to tell you if you're going to go to heaven in the streets paved with gold or to hell and eternal damnation. And I learned those things very, very well and very deeply. And so I went through life singing in the songs and the creed and saying the creed that says I'm a sinner. And if I don't follow the Trinity, I am in eternal damnation and hellfire. And so around the time I was 18, I decided I was gay and started a relationship. And so I stopped going to church because I didn't want to flaunt the sin. I didn't want to, be in the sanctity of the church with my partner who, we had to kind of hide. And so it was a long, long time before I was able to go back to church. My aunt said, there's this church you might want to go to. They talk about things that I think you would really like. And if you go there, well, and by the way, the minister is a gay man. I was like, well, how does that work? So I went to Unity, and it is often said that when you first go to Unity, you might cry, that many people do. Well, I didn't just cry. I was sobbing, deep, deep sobbing. So why? What did I hear that day? So I heard that God within all of us that we are a spark of the divine, that we are a drop in the ocean. And how could that be? How could I be one with God and God one with me? What a concept. And so I started going to this church and learning more deeply the message and what it meant. And Lord, let me tell you, it felt like freedom to me. It felt like freedom to my heart, freedom to love who I wanted to love, freedom to express the fullness of who my being, and not to worry about damnation, but salvation of my very soul and happiness and in joy and expression. Because now I was a part of the divine creation. And if I co-create with God, it can be my purest joy. What a turnaround. And then the most amazing day of my life was when it was announced that marriage would become legal. And we had a service there, and about 300 to 400 people that I had come to know and love were out in the chairs around us, and a group of us went through and we did a ceremony of religious joining, and my wife, Joan, and I walked through those people, and I looked around, and for the first time in my life, what I experienced was acceptance from all these people. That was an amazing moment, because I had lived hidden and, withholding who I really was. And to just walk proudly was an amazing day in my life. And so unity and the freedom to express who we are and to be who we are. And I would be remiss if I didn't say thank you to everyone in this room who allows me to come in with my wife and sit with my wife as partners, as an expression of who we are out in the open. It's crazy. Because in the past, it was not even possible. So thank you. Thank you to all your hearts. Thank you for this place where we can be ourselves and to express. I deeply appreciate all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you, Kyra, if you're watching from afar today. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Carol. We're not going to cover every demographic that has experienced inequity in their lives for some reason in this country. I know how many of you are out there. And if you're listening today online, the population can swell feeling this way. And I hope that what you heard today from those who shared is that they became the change that they wanted to see in the world. Something that we think we've heard from Mahatma Gandhi, but it turns out those were not his words. It's not that someone else said them, it's actually that he said even better words that I want to share with you up here on the screen. He said, "We but mirror the world. All the tendencies present in the outer world are to be found in the world of our body. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him. This is the divine mystery supreme. A wonderful thing it is, and the source of our happiness. We need not wait to see what others do." That line, "as a man changes his own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards him," he speaks of the divine universal law that unity owns as its third principle, where we say that we create our life experience through our thoughts and our feelings and our beliefs, only mirroring what we heard Jesus say, that let it be done to us as we believe. The same that is written thousands of years before Jesus from the book of Proverbs, "As a man thinks in his heart, so is he." And you may or may not know the name of Viktor Frankl, who was a Jew in a Nazi concentration camp, 3 or 4 of them during World War II, who managed to survive, though he lost all of his family members. And he credits his survival to a level of consciousness that he speaks up here on the screen. Everything can be taken from a man, but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. What was the attitude that he chose? Rather than to look at the devastation all around him and the fear for his life, he kept focusing on the meaning and the purpose of life. What had meaning for him was where he put his thoughts on a daily basis. And I see that being played out in a metaphysical way. When we go back thousands of years to apostles Paul and Silas, who had been taken in, beaten, imprisoned, put their feet in shackles, and instead of worrying about what was next for them, it was about midnight, and they were laying there praying to God and singing hymns to God. And the scriptures say that suddenly there was such a violent earthquake that the foundations of the prison were shaken. At once, all the prison doors flew open and everyone's chains came loose. Now, at that point in the story, they could have left. They could have fled and gotten away from the prison, but they knew that the jailer would be put to death if they did that. And so they stayed, and they spoke the word of the Lord to him, says the scriptures. Now, when we look at this story metaphysically, think of it as various elements that represent a deeper part of us. So, for instance, it talks about foundations, the foundation of the prison, similar to the collective consciousness, that energy that is underneath all that we think. So what happened to that foundation of the prison? It was shaken. The doors were open. The chains were loosed. Think of that collective consciousness being shaken, torn down, shattered by a new level of consciousness. And where was that consciousness coming? By a new level of consciousness. And where was that consciousness coming from? Paul and Silas, who were laying there singing hymns to God, praying and praising God. And that we look at metaphysically this way up here on the screen. A conscious connection with the great source of energy, divine mind, which has no consciousness of opposition. Spiritualized mind forces are pure and joyful, and this dynamic power shatters error forces, giving spiritual will and understanding greater freedom of expression. No external condition or circumstance can hold the soul of man in bondage when he makes mental contact with God. If you want freedom to come into your life, begin to rejoice in the things that you know about the goodness of God. I'm going to say that one again. If you want freedom to come into your life, begin to rejoice in the things that you know about the goodness of God. Begin to praise God for the abundance of all things. Your words will crack the omnipresent ethers, and good will flow to you from every direction. That's what we equate to that symbol of singing hymns to God and praying and praising. Now remember, I still said that there's plenty of concrete work to be done, and Paul knew this as well. What he did next was actually, it just really fits in with our times when you think about what we've seen on the news over the last few years. The story goes on to say that when it was daylight, the magistrates sent their officers to the jailer with the order, release those men. The jailer told Paul, the magistrates have ordered that you and Silas be released. Now you can leave. Go in peace. But Paul said to the officers, they beat us publicly without a trial, even though we are Roman citizens, and threw us into prison. Does this sound familiar? Anyone? And now do they want to get rid of us quietly? No. Let them come themselves and escort us out. The officers reported this to the magistrates, and when they heard that Paul and Silas were Roman citizens, they were alarmed. They came to appease them and escorted them from the prison, requesting them to leave the city. And instead, Paul and Silas went to the house of one of their followers and encouraged their brothers and sisters, and then they left. So we're all called to take those steps, to speak the truth to those who have no voice and for those who have no voice. We are called to notice injustice and call it out. And when we witness exclusion, to welcome them in. We are going to have a struggle, I'm guessing, experiencing freedom for all in this country. If we only depend on human laws to support human citizens and expect humans to honor them. And this is where we find our freedom. We are not just naturalized citizens of the United States. We are spiritualized citizens of the infinite realm. That's a little bit different, wouldn't you say? We studied a book recently by Christian Sundberg called A Walk in the Physical. Christian had had a moment where he suddenly came awake and remembered who he was before he came into the body. And that all that he remembers of being a spiritual being came pouring through into his consciousness. And he put a book together that's quite thick. If you want to read it, it's called A Walk in the Physical. But this paragraph I read, I thought, oh my gosh, this needs to be heard today. So here's his words. Your true nature is so great, it cannot be fully actualized into our world. Now take that in for a minute. Your true nature is what? Spirit. Spirit. And the fullness that you are of God cannot be fully actualized. The depths of abundance exist within you. You do not need to turn to the things of the world to find your richness. Worth already belongs to you. Freedom and power are our true, inalienable nature. Spirituality is about allowing that true nature and knowing it and becoming it, not just about the nature of the forms or constraints that life expresses through. And as you know that, you are able to then bring that to those around you in important physical and tangible ways. Listen to the richness of your being beneath all the earthly conditioning, and allow yourself to know this while you are human. So your physical experience can be that much more one of joy. Take that in for a moment. I know that for those of us who do experience discrimination and prejudice, inequity in this country, that those words may not have deep meaning for you, but I'm telling you, if we can get to the depth of that meaning, we can go above and beyond anything that's trying to limit us in our country. Because in truth, as spirit, there is no bondage. We know no bondage. Paul tried to tell that to the Corinthians. He said that the Lord is the Spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. There's always been freedom for all. Now here's my words that I want you to hear, so I'm going to read them to you. Truth only becomes self-evident if we choose it for ourselves. This freedom comes through a higher law, not a human law. Only you can enforce it for yourself. Did you hear that? Do you understand that? These truths shall be self-evident, but only if we choose the truth of spirit as our true nature, and only if we enforce it through our divine law. For ourselves, we cannot do it for anyone else. And listen, no one else can deprive us of the power of that divine law. We can enforce it for ourselves, and nothing can stand in the way of our spiritual nature and the power that is inherent in our being. There's so much energy in me right now, I just want to... Okay. I'm hoping that you heard that in the words spoken by our guest today when Kyra talked about being the best version of herself through her choice. We heard Carlos talking about recognizing that he was the wholeness of God as a spark of divinity within himself. Nothing can change that about him. He had to know that for himself. We heard Diane talk about being young at heart by choice, by holding that consciousness in her heart, free to be as young as she chooses to be. And we heard Carol talk about not being held in bondage any longer, but when she changed her thoughts about herself, no matter how the world around her may see what she is, who she is, how she lives, they have no power to deprive her of the fullness of God within herself, that she is co-creating her life with God, not against God's wishes or will, but right there aligned with God, expressing the fullness of who she is, as she is. That is a choice that no one can keep her from. That's the freedom that is for all within all of us. And so I want to finish today with a declaration of our own independence. I'm going to ask us to say together our own pledge, our own intention for our life, coming from this consciousness of freedom for all that is ours right now, and emancipate that freedom to express fully through us. Here's our words up here on the screen, and here's the words printed on parchment paper for you to take home with you. Let's say this together. Standing first in a consciousness of liberty, I know I am one with the fullness of God. I can never be separate from the supreme intelligence that guides my steps on my perfect path of freedom. Keep going. Despite all circumstance, I am never held back from God's infinite supply, which only waits for my faith and imagination to call it into manifestation. Keep going. And even in the face of the darkest hatred, I choose to become the way of God. Looking through the eyes of spirit, I choose to see the good, allowing divine love to free us all from our shackles. Keep going. Shining as a beacon of self-evident truth. Stop. Stand up. Please. Now, let's say this together. Shining as a beacon of self-evident truth, I now freely and fully embody my inherent divine rights of life and liberty and the expression of happiness, and so it is. Know this for yourself deeply. Whoever you are, however the world has treated you, however it feels like you are being held back, however many laws have been written but ignored, hold these truths to be self-evident. Choose them for yourself. Enact them for yourself through your own consciousness, because you are a spiritualized citizen of the infinite realm. And I am not running for president. So let's just take a moment to quiet down. Let's see if I can bring my energy just into a peaceful place now. Oh, feel the joy of freedom in your heart. A freedom that takes us above and beyond any circumstance. A freedom that lifts us above all limitation. We allow our attention to be drawn down into the heart space, where our home truly is. Open the door to your home of spirit now from your heart, and allow that divine light to shine through. And allow my words to speak for you and as you. I am free. I am free in this body, no matter its age or behavior. For I am free to know the power of divine life, the vibrant activity of God that renews and empowers, that strengthens and cleanses. Divine life is free to flow through every cell of my body as I see it and say it. I am free in the life of God. I am free in a realm of divine supply, invisible though it is to the eye. It is this very substance, this divine energy, that allows my manifestation to come forth. I freely draw this divine substance into the physical to supply my every need. I am free to create. I am free to give and receive the infinite goodness of God. I am free to know the truth. I am free to know that whether laws are obeyed or ignored, that the divine wisdom of the supreme intelligence is mine. And I am easily and freely guided by that intelligence to choose that which is for my highest good. I am free to use that guidance to be the best of my best self. And I am free to love. No matter who stands before me or how dark it looks, I am free to love the divine presence within me and to be that presence to the world. I am free to see the good when it appears to be missing, and I choose to know the good for both myself and all beings on the planet. For there is only one presence and power working in this universe, and its power is love. I freely choose love. And with that choice, I rise above all of my circumstances, all of those who might limit me. I rise above in this power of love, knowing the truth of who I am. And as I go forward, I allow these truths to be self-evident, that I am divine life, divine substance, divine intelligence, and divine love. Nothing and no one can keep me from my infinite freedom in God. And so it is. Amen.